New Gloucester might seem like an ordinary Maine town, but under the illusion is something much greater: the Shakers. The Shakers are a Christian sect, spanning back 200 years. They believe in living without excess, in other words, a quaint life on the farm. Anne Lee, commonly known as Mother Ann, was born in England in 1736. Mother Ann claimed to have experienced visions sent by God. She had a particular vision that she believed was to send the message of leaving the country and starting her own community of like-minded people. Mother Ann's immigration to America, along with a handful of other believers, would be the start to the Shakers.
So the Shakers came out of Methodism in the northwest corner of England and in and around the town of Manchester. And they were a radical group, and they were practicing pretty much sort of a primitive Christian outlook, Protestant. And to that group came a remarkable young woman by the name of Anne Lee, who in 1770 becomes the leader of the church.
Through a series of revelations, and she was imprisoned, she did something we might find a little offensive today. She walked into Manchester Cathedral and she called them all the whores of Babylon while they were in service. Well, and of course, it's a theocracy, England, and so the church immediately seized her and thrust her into jail, and they kept her there in close confinement for 30 days. And it was during that time she had these revelations. It sort of exploded almost instantaneously, and it went through New York State and all of New England, and she and the first Shakers start traveling and building up these places. And she died very young as a result of her religious persecution. The Congregational Church, that was the standing order at the time, really were affronted by the Shakers. She was beaten, she was stoned, she was harassed, she was persecuted, she was imprisoned. And yet, remarkably speaking, she never called for vengeance, and the community remained very passive and very true to what they saw as their belief. And she died in 1784. James Whitaker, a young, vibrant member from England, took over, but he only lived 3 years. And then it becomes all-American. And really, we're proud of our ancestors, our foundation, but really Shakerism could never exist anywhere but in America. And it's very American. And eventually it grew to 18 communities, mostly in New England, New York State, and then the Kentucky Revival brought in Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and eventually 2 later communities, one in Georgia and one in Florida. So there were upwards of 18 communities. But as time went on, communalism wasn't so attractive, rural life wasn't so attractive, the whole thing wasn't so attractive. And so the communities dwindled down until there's only one, and that's here at Savin Lake.
Shakers have 3 main principles they live by: confession of sin, communal living, and celibacy.
It changes over and over, but it revolves around, Mother Ann said, hands to work and hearts to God. So it's work and worship. And we all rise at different times depending on what your duties are. We say our prayers in our room. Then we have breakfast at 7:30, which is all done communally. Then we have prayers at table, and that rotates for the leadership around the members of the community during the different days of the week. Then we go to our tasks, the farm. We have sheep and cows that need to be taken care of. Cooking, cleaning, correspondence, business work, craft work, whatever it is that happens to need to be done during that time. We meet again at 11:30 for prayers, and then noontime is dinner, which is the big meal of the day. Then we go back to our work, and at 5:30 we have supper. We have a religious service on Wednesday nights at 5, but other than that, the evenings are usually free for recreation. We take newspapers and journals, and people read. There's a television if people want to watch television. There's more work to do if you do it. And then Sundays are the one day we do no unnecessary work. So then that's the one service of the week that's open to the outside world, and that's at 10 a.m. The Shakers have always been technologically advanced, and we adapt to that and find it necessary. You know, we were the first people in town, on this side of town, to have it, and the first people in town to have an automobile. We don't believe in rampant consumerism. We think that's a really bad thing. But anything that makes our life easier and better, we'll embrace it. Brother Ted in the mid 1980s got computers involved in this community, and we have, unfortunately, a phone. You have to have a cell phone sometimes, and so we have that. But we only use what we need to use. And although the museum has a Facebook page, for instance, we don't see any value for us as a religious community to be involved in that. And it occupies too much time that seems senseless and wasteless. So we don't engage with that. But we are progressive, we continue to be progressive and embrace technology that is useful. One of the Shakers had left and actually lived next door to my grandparents for a little while, and so there were all these stories about the Shakers. And then my parents were very, very historically minded. I'm the oldest of three. And for our birthdays, we would do things like the Freedom Trail, or we'd go to Plymouth Plantation, or whatever. And this particular year, it was my brother's birthday in June, and we went to the Restoration at Hancock Shaker Village in Massachusetts. So at the end of the tour, I went up and I said, thank you. Also, what I knew about the Shakers was so limited, but I said, I do know one thing. And I said, Ricardo Belden was not a lifelong Shaker. And she told me I was wrong. It's not such an easy thing to swallow. When I know I'm right, I'm right. And I'll acquiesce if I'm wrong and say I'm wrong, but I was fuming. And so they had a big map up inside, and it showed where all the Shaker communities were, and it showed Sabbath Day Lake was still going. So I wrote a little card, I typed it because my handwriting's impossible to read, and I said, Ricardo Belden, born, gathered, left, rejoined, died. And I said, stamp self-addressed envelope, and I thought, I'm going to get this back, and I'm going back up to Hancock, and I'm going to find that guy and say, the Shakers say I'm right. Well, I didn't get that back. I got this big long letter back instead from a man styled Brother Theodore E. Johnson. And the very first Shaker he ever met was Ricardo Belden, and the reason he was a Shaker in large part was because of Ricardo. So I said, to heck with them, and I started writing to the Shakers because you can't find anything about the Shakers in the 20th century. And so I wanted to know, did you guys continue to progress? And what is it? What's your lifestyle like today? And so after about a year, Brother Ted said, well, why don't you just come and see? So in the day after Thanksgiving in '75, I came out for a long weekend. And it was a life-changing experience. I had never been to a place where I felt at home. I had never been with strangers who I thought were my family. And I did not want to be a Shaker. At that time, I just wanted to give to them. So it evolved over about 3 years. We don't see ourselves as the last, and we are the present day Shakers, and there are more coming. And we know that and feel it, and we actually just had a new member join at the end of December. And so the thing is, it's kind of sad in one sense to be the only community of believers. It would be nice to have more so that you could visit and interact, but we have other communities around us that we are involved with that are also religious. So we have a camaraderie around that, and frankly, we're so busy about our everyday life and chores, you don't really think about that too much.
Look at like 60 sheep. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. That's a nice picture. Look, Kylie almost opened the gate. Look at all those chickens.